everybody into the History of Aviation podcast. My name is Derrick Beeler. I'm the producer of this show, and I'm joined by David Gorman and David Rowe. How you guys?
Doing great.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Good deal.
Good to see you, Derrick.
Same to you. And just to let everybody know a little bit about this, I'm going to more or less produce the show as well as host it some. So I'll be more the producer that chimes in occasionally. So more about me later. Let's start with you guys. David Rowe, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about you and your aviation background.
Basically, a lifelong aviation fan. Pretty much started with Baa Black Sheep. Was a 10-year-old boy, came on TV, and it just blew my mind. I love the airplanes. I love the stories. Watching it now, it's a little bit cheesy, but, at the time, it was big, beautiful birds flying and fighting. And, that got me interested in aviation. My father was in the military, and we used to stand in the yard and look up and, what's that flying over? And we take guesses. And this was before today, where you've got an actual app and you can just look and see what it was. So that, have been a fan all my life, and I'm an artist. So I do a lot of photography, and that led me to creating a website called aerophile.com. And so I publish all of my videos and photos through all the social medias under my Aerophile name. So, I publish pretty much almost daily, a new video every Friday, and go to air shows, go to the airport. Matter of fact, I was out today shooting tankers, KC-135s with C-17s and a KC-46 Pegasus with another 17. So I'm out every day chasing planes.
Good deal. Moving on to you, Dave Gorman. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I grew up with the son of a Marine aviation mechanic. My dad was in the Marines for just a couple of years. He always said he was fortunate to be in between World War II and Korea, but he worked on the Corsair, which is, that David's mentioned his introduction to air shows with Baa Black Sheep. My dad worked on those Corsairs, and so we both have that in common as far as it being one of our favorite planes. And he always had a love of aviation, and particularly propeller stuff from World War II and slightly afterwards. He took me and a couple of my brothers to an air show at Patuxent River in Maryland in 1970, and so I was 9 years old and saw for the first time what planes could actually do. I didn't realize planes could bank and turn and twist, and it sounds so silly now, but I just had never seen that before. And I was enthralled. I could not believe what I was seeing. I saw a Marine Corps Bronco, OV-10 Bronco, that was, just twisting and rolling and climbing and diving. And I was like, wow. And I just remember, I looked at planes completely differently. And going to some other shows in the Washington, Baltimore area, I saw an SR-71 fly in 1973 or so at Andrews Air Force Base, and got to see some cool things kind of before my time when I didn't really understand or appreciate how unusual or rare that was. But it was neat, and going to some other shows later on with my dad, and just being able to ask him questions. He was pretty knowledgeable. Sometimes other people would ask him, which I thought was really, really cool. And it just became a way for us to stay connected over the years. And so gradually kind of getting out a little bit further, moved to Kentucky and went up to an air show in Dayton in 1979 and back in 84. Didn't know that there were a lot of air shows around, but eventually I got to where I'm going up to Oshkosh pretty regularly now. And I think this year I've seen 6 air shows in 6 different states. With David, I share the hobby of photography. That really kind of extended my own interest in enjoyment of air shows. Take way too many pictures now that it's all on digital. And occasionally I actually go back and edit some of those pictures. So I have quite a folder full of digital shots and everything. But just, I'm not a pilot. I enjoy spending time at airports and I'm much more into the military than the civil side of things. I can often tell the difference between a Cessna and a Piper, but beyond that, not a whole lot. But I do enjoy the military aspect of things, and in particular World War II.
That's great, guys. How do you guys feel about the podcast moving forward?
I'm excited to see what we can come up with and where it leads, because it's kind of unlimited. We can pretty much go anywhere and everywhere.
That's true.
I like the idea of maybe talking up some events that are in the area that are of interest and our own experiences. I think that we've had David and I have traveled to many shows together, and it's different when you go to out of state shows. There are things that you learn and things that you know, and things that are important that you pick up, and I hope that that's something that might be of interest to people who are listening. The history part of things is something that we both get a big kick out of, and so I'm excited about sharing that with people, with an audience that hopefully has that interest already, and if not, maybe we can really invite them to enjoy that part of this. As David said, just look it up and try to identify planes. It's so much easier now than it used to be.
It is. Yeah.
Apps and things like that. And I'm a school teacher, and last year I had a kid in my class who was in 7th grade, and he turns out loves airplanes, and we kind of bonded over that. And he was on some of the apps and some of the websites, and he just got a camera, and his enthusiasm is it reminds me a bit about me, although he knows a lot more than I did at 13 years old. But it's exciting and it's contagious, so I enjoy that.
It's neat knowing, and back in the day, you just heard it and looked up. Now you know what's coming, so it's pretty neat.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I have radar on my computer screen literally 24 hours a day. So every time I walk in and touch my computer, probably the first thing I'm looking at is the radar.
Yeah.
Anything coming this way.
See what's up, right?
Yeah. Yeah, what's out there?
Well, all right, guys, let's jump right into segment 1. All right, we're going to jump right into segment 1 here with Dave Gorman and David Rowe. And the subject, the particular aircraft that we want to discuss today, is the P-51 Mustang. So, David, I'll let you begin.
It's probably, if you ask someone who's not familiar with aviation history, what kind of plane is a World War II fighter plane? First plane that comes to their mind is going to be the P-51 Mustang. It has become the most recognizable aircraft that you will see.
Iconic.
Yeah, definitely iconic regarding the warbirds of World War II. It's just, that's the plane that everybody identifies with that period, that war.
It absolutely is. I mean, you said iconic, and I don't think there's a better example of an iconic World War II fighter, because number one, the story of its development is so fascinating, about the speed in which it was designed and rolled out, and its success, the list of pilots who had tremendous success and impact in that plane, the legacy of the Red Tail Squadron, and historical references with that plane. The fact that there's so many of them that still fly. You're liable to see one at nearly any decent air show in the States and elsewhere around the world. I mean, there's at least probably 100 of them or so that still fly.
Yeah, and they come in every variety of look, paint scheme. That they're at the Reno air races in racing colors, so they're everywhere. If you want to see one, you can see one pretty easily.
Yeah, we just recently got to see one perform at Smoky Mountain Air Show recently on the Saturday.
I think that was that Red Nose?
I believe it was.
I think it was Red Nose from the commemorative Air Force out of Georgia that brought that. And that plane gets around quite a bit to air shows in this area. So that one you're liable to see. But there's another one that's based here in Knoxville quite often. You'll see it. That's P-51D called Ain't Misbehaving.
Ain't Misbehaving, yep.
Yeah.
Yep, that is Les Stowers, I believe.
Yeah, Les Stowers.
Yep, that's correct. Yeah. So let's talk about the beginning of the P-51 Mustang.
Well, the plane was designed, I believe, as a earlier. They had like an attack version of it that was early designed with an Allison engine and had some success. It was ground attack, the A-36, and then the design. The historic part about the design is that it went so quickly from drawing board to actual first flight, and just a beautiful design. The very recognizable with that scoop in the bottom of the plane, the radiator scoop, and the sleekness of the design. It really is a easy on the eyes type of a thing. So, but fast, reliable, rugged, American built, and really was as we mentioned, just critical to the Allied war effort in World War II.
Yeah, I think something that about the P-51 that really made it the workhorse and the stallion that it is the fact that it married the laminar flow wing, which was sort of a new thing that was extremely air efficient. It had provided great lift and little drag, and with the introduction of the Merlin engine, which was built by Packard from a Rolls-Royce design, once they married that to that airframe, that plane just absolutely took off. It could do high altitude, it could do low altitude, and it pretty much covered all your bases. Whatever you needed it to do, it was capable.
Yeah, it really packed a lot of firepower, 650 caliber machine guns, and with the addition of the ability to carry the drop tanks, really extended its range and did a lot of fighter escort, as well as its own, head-to-head combat in the skies over Europe and Asia. But the fighter escort role was something that was crucial and critical because we needed those long-range bombing runs and raids, and our boys were getting shot up. And the appearance of the Mustang really helped protect and save the lives of a lot of those bomber crew.
Absolutely, it was crucial to the success of the bombing campaign because the planes could fly all the way to the target and back, whereas some of the other planes at the time, the P-47, the P-38, they just didn't have those legs. But with those drop tanks, and they were capable. The Mustang was capable of going all the way and fighting. It wasn't just riding along with them. They could go out and chase some of the enemy planes down. So it was a true workhorse.
I know that, like I said, I think there may be about 100 that still fly around the world or so, and but in museums there are an awful lot that are historic that are on display in museums. And I was always surprised at the widespread adoption of that plane throughout air forces around the world, not just in World War II, but there were some folks that were still flying that aircraft in major roles into the 50s and 60s and even into the 70s. So it was a workhorse, as you said, no pun intended, but it had long legs and a long service life throughout the world. So it's still recognized not just in our country and in allied countries, places in Europe, but Central America and South America, the Philippines. A lot of those countries flew it into, like I say, into the 60s and 70s even.
Yeah, as we were getting rid of them and moving into the jet age, a lot of those South American countries found good use for them, and thank goodness they did, because those planes came back to us now and have been restored and are flying today. So it's lucky that a lot of them were built and a lot of them were kept in service for a long time.
Do you think that this sleek design was still what we know as the fighter jet today? Is there still some similarities?
Well, I always, heard that about the F-16 with the bubble canopy, that all around type of view that you get in the F-16, from what I've been told, since I've never sat in one. But that the P-51 was with its bubble canopy, with I guess the D model might have been the first one to have that. But the visibility that it gave, the all around visibility without framework that might be in the way, bracing and things like that, that definitely had to be an advantage, and I think the pilots appreciated it most of the time.
Another thing, referencing the F-16 and the P-51, the air scoop that is on the bottom of the P-51, that same design is used in the F-16 where its scoop is, because it has that boundary layer that helps airflow into the jet, which was the same thing as the P-51, where the air was, guided into the plane as efficiently as possible. So that was similar design work from the 40s that was used in the 70s on the F-16. So yes, some of that design work is still being used today.
I know that there's been speculation about the number of kills they had in the skies over Europe. And the head-to-head stuff, of course, was so important. And there were, shoot downs of Me-262s, of jets with this plane. It probably had a pretty wide range of aircraft that it shot down. But I think, again, that it packed a punch, but it was more appreciated by those bombers that were carrying 10 guys.
Right.
And, the nickname Little Friends, that was something that those crews, they appreciated being able to see flying alongside or flying high cover, or just doing sweeps and making sure that things were clear. There's video of P-51s in action and in combat and in training, where they're flying alongside a bomber formation, and then they sight the enemy and they drop their tanks. They drop those paper long range tanks, and off they go to fight and return and continue protecting the bomber trail. They were good at what they were there to do. They provided a lot of pretty much guaranteed mission success for a lot of those bombing raids, clearing the skies. And by the time that they were really later in the war, some of the better German pilots had been shot down by P-51s, and so that type of attrition meant that they were going up against less and less experienced pilots the longer the war went on. So that's something that you have to take into account as well, that they really increased their odds for success by being so good and being having those long legs
and reliable. The plane and the engines were super reliable, and they kept them running, and they kept them there and back.
Still running today, most of them, yeah.
Oh yeah, they are rebuilding those engines and rebuilding those planes, and they run as probably better today because they're not being pushed as hard as they were back in the war. But at the same time, yes, I mean, good design continues to show that it was well designed.
Yeah, I don't know that I could exactly handle that after being behind the stick of a Piper Cub the last 3 weeks. So that might be a little more than I'd bargained for.
It might be fun finding that out, though. So
exactly, yeah.
There are a lot of places that have 2-seat. I think they're TF-51s. David, is that correct? The 2-seaters that you can get flight training in. You can take a flight experience in, and sometimes they'll give you control of the stick at those times. You can see what that's like if you wanted to, Derrick.
Exactly. Yeah, I like the sound of it.
Go rat-a-tat-tat-tat and pretend you're taking out the enemy in front of you there, I guess.
I like it.
It's not cheap, I'm sure, but
I'm sure it's not. Well,
it's great that there's
J3 is not cheap either.
No, it's great that experience still exists, and as we said, you're awful liable to see P-51s at area air shows. It's such a common thing, but what a great sound, what a great look. Climbing high and rolling, and such a maneuverable aircraft. I can't imagine what it would have felt like to see one of those on your tail. You better beat the bushes pretty good and get the heck out of there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it has such a distinctive purr. that, you hear that engine and you recognize it. You recognize it every time you hear it. You can't forget it.
Exactly.
There've been again, there are websites that keep track of the survivors and things like that. Now, I'll sometimes get lost in looking at some of the aircraft, and I'm looking at serial numbers or looking at names, and you realize that some of them have been painted and they represent different aircraft. So most of the ones that are flying today they're not the original World War II aircraft. They may be some that possibly never saw combat, which may be why they're a survivor. They weren't worked that hard 70 years ago or whatever. But a lot of times the owners will pay tribute to aces, and sometimes well-known aces. I think Bud Anderson has 3 aircraft that are painted like old crows that he flew. There've been planes painted to represent Glamorous Gladys, the Chuck Yeager Mustang that he flew. But I really enjoy that history lesson because some have some very unique markings, squadron markings, and theater markings. There's some that represent National Guard aircraft from the late 40s. Some that represent aircraft that were stationed in Japan towards the end of the war, or at the end of the war. And I really enjoy, again, the history lesson of these squadrons, these markings. And it's really cool to see sometimes where you'll see 3 or 4 aircraft flying together that all are painted as if they're in the same squadron from 70 or almost 80 years ago.
Yeah, it's also interesting when an actual pilot comes to sit in the plane, and there's stories that they write, pictures of this old guy standing next to a plane, and there's a picture of him from the 40s in his flight suit, and it's like just history lives even to this day, and they're here to see it. And that's a great thing that they get honored for their service, and we get to see it.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
I'm trying to think when the first time was that I remember seeing a Mustang at an air show, because I knew what they were, of course, but some of the first shows I went to were not real heavy on World War II things. And then somewhere around the early 90s, I heard about an air show up in Louisville, Kentucky that had they were advertising they were going to have maybe as many as 20 Mustangs. And I was lucky enough to go to that 2 years in a row. And Chuck Yeager was there, and Robin Olds was still alive, and he was there, and Bud was there, and these guys were flying in a 2-seater, so they were able to fly. If they weren't actually at the stick the whole time, they had a qualified pilot with them. But it's such a thrill to see some of these guys, and as David mentioned, they come alive telling those stories. And unfortunately, many of those folks have been lost in recent years, but the memories are there, and they were old men who became young men again when they were sitting up in the cockpit or standing on the wing. And you start seeing these guys moving their hands like this, and they're talking about maneuvering and what they were doing. And you lean in and listen, because that firsthand historical account is just, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's riveting to listen to these guys talk, because it's they saw it themselves, they did it, and to know that they can do it and still remember it and pass that information along is just it's unbelievable to hear.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's I get even I recently visited back in February. We were at the museum in Dayton, and it's almost emotional for me, to go through and see the planes and look at everything. And I'm that guy that goes in the museum. It takes me 2 days because I read every board on the wall, while everybody else in my group is going, come on. I'm reading this, the place is almost closing and I'm halfway through it. That's me at a museum, especially one like that.
That one is impossible to see at all. I mean, I've been a couple of times, and I'm sure I've maybe seen half, maybe. Mm-hmm. It's just, there's so much to see, so much history there. It's just incredible that what they've been able to collect.
It is really. And we arrived on a Friday afternoon, close to the time they were closing, and there's a Comfort Inn across the street, which is where we stayed. And Yeah, I even that afternoon I was overlooking at the outside stuff. I was
Uh-huh.
that after driving from here to Dayton, Ohio. I was that excited.
Yeah, I've spent probably a dozen nights at that Comfort Inn. That to
Mm-hmm.
me is
Yep.
I don't, the price is not bad, and it's right there, and boy, it sure comes in handy.
Yeah, breakfast is not horrible there either. It's yeah, I think most everybody there, the several times that I've stayed there, most everybody was there for the museum. So
Yeah. So, Comfort Inn, if you're listening, we'd
yep.
love to have your sponsorship. We'll, we'll mention it all the time.
Comfort Inn, Wright Patterson Air Force Base.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
To be
Maybe we'll
exact.
maybe edit that out later. But yeah, I've stayed there a bunch of times. It's a great place. So
Yeah,
I'm
it's
sure.
it's 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 right there. You stay there all weekend, and it's just museum, 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 and you like David said, you never get through it. We're probably looking at going back, next summer, just specifically for that.
It's we've done it, so it's a great place. I used to do that in combination with they used to have a really good air show that was heavier with some World War II things up in Dayton. They still have a show there most every year, but it's a little bit more acrobatic and some more modern military equipment, which again is still fantastic, and they draw a good crowd. There was a time when they had a lot of heavies, the Lancaster come down from Canada, and B-29 and B-24 and a bunch of B-17s, and they've gotten away from that type of thing. And some of those planes themselves are not making a lot of trips and going to shows as much as they used to. So, but taking us back to the Mustang, it's great that there are so many because, like I say, you were liable to see them, and
Mm-hmm.
there's lots of great books, lots of great resources out there. David, I didn't go to the Gathering of Mustangs in Columbus in 2009. Did you?
No, sir, I did not. I hate that I missed that, but I did not make that one.
That they had over 100 flying Mustangs on the field
Oh wow.
that weekend, and that was something that I know there were coffee table sized books that came out that documented all the aircraft that were there, and kind of got tired of reading about it after a while because I'm like, okay, I know I should have gone.
Should have went.
Stop
Yeah.
stop reminding me. So that was a pretty fantastic thing, and they had many of the air crew, and it's not just pilots they celebrate. They do have crew members, crew chiefs, mechanics, things like that were celebrated with the gathering up there in Columbus, and then at other times too. So
Definitely. Any closing statements on the P-51 Mustang?
I just can't imagine World War II without it. It's kind of scary to think what I mean, we started the war with some biplanes and Brewster buffaloes and things that we were sending to other countries who
Mm-hmm.
were pretty desperate. And some of the aircraft we had, we thought we were in halfway decent shape with, but it was amazing to think that the development was going on because everybody knew what was coming, and thank goodness we had some forward seeing engineers and airplane manufacturers who were thinking,
Mm-hmm.
here's a need that we're going to have. They already need this now over in Europe, and there's a good chance that we're going to be drawn into this. So let's not wait until we need it. Let's go ahead and make it. And American ingenuity and creativity, and stepping up to the plate and swinging hard.
There you go.
Hard to imagine what the war would have been like, especially in Europe without the P-51.
For sure.
North American aviation created something in a very short period of time to fill a gap that, we didn't really know we needed until we needed it. And, 100 days and plane flying and often we're still watching it today. So thank you guys.
Definitely. It was great. And gentlemen, thoroughly enjoyed it. And I look forward to a whole lot more of this in the future for sure.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. And it's fascinating to learn some things about the Mustang and recognize this absolute icon of the skies over Europe and Asia. And what a pleasure to be here with you guys. Thanks.
Yeah, and we're all three, diving into this with both feet, and I think it's going great. And I'll close up the podcast from here. So for David Rowe, Dave Gorman. I'm Derrick Beeler. Thanks for listening to the History of Aviation podcast.
Thanks, folks.